You're hearing Echoes, and I'm John Diliberto. If you follow New Age music, then you'll have seen that Sherry Finzer is everywhere these days. She's got a record label, Heart Dance Records, with many artists on it. She's a promoter of other artists' music, and oh yeah, she also plays flute and has released solo albums and numerous collaborations. She's been on at least 5 albums in the last 2 years, and they include the trio Trialogue, Travelers with Phil Sheridan, Let There Be Light with Tom Moore, and Majestica with Cass Anawati. Even as we spoke in New Orleans at the ZMR Music Awards, another album was coming.
I know. I just recorded last week with Mark Holland. So I have those songs in my head right now.
That album of flute duets, Somewhere New, just came out.
Prolific is the term that I use to describe Sherry on a regular basis.
That's Cass Anawati. He plays in the Anawati-Russell duo as well as the group 2002. Majestica is his project with Sherry Finzer.
The first thing, which you probably realize, is she is an absolutely phenomenal musical talent. She has the classical background, but as an improvising musician, she's amazing. She can jump on stage in the moment with anyone and make you sound really good.
Musicians are pulled into the gravity of Sherry Finzer's orbit, multi-instrumentalist Tom Moore.
Well, they're around, and I think Sherry very much plugs into all of them. So I guess in a sense, it's like the planet circling the sun, and Sherry's kind of the sun, and all these planets and musicians are kind of circling.
In the case of Tom Moore, he's a veteran musician who actually recorded with the pop singer Keith on the 1967 hit 98.6.
Hey, 98.6, it's good to have you back again. Oh, hey.
I was on those records. I was in that band, and studio musician, traveled a lot, spent 6 months on the road with the Byrds opening for them, and a couple tours with them. Beach Boys, Dick Clark's Where the Action Is. I was on that show quite often.
After that, he became a jet pilot, got involved in religious studies, and earned a master's degree in Buddhist studies. He now runs Sense of Purpose Communications, a personal development company. That explains his meditative collaborations with Sherry Finzer, which is why he likes Finzer's bass flute playing.
Yeah, it's been described as a little more seductive when I'm on the bass flute.
Like those deep monk-sounding voices, And Sherry picked up on that right away. It wasn't necessarily, I suggested play the bass because I'll give her the room to do what she does. I kind of explain what the journey is and the imagery. And Sherry says, oh, okay, let me get this, and mostly goes to the bass flute.
He'll tell me, imagine walking up to a monastery and you open the door and there's 100 monks sitting in there. And so he gives me the imagery to allow me to just create what I feel goes with what he's already created.
The Majestica project is quite a bit different.
Yeah, and Cass is like, okay, this is not a New Age album. He goes, I don't want you to play like a New Age flutist.
Cass Anawati had a list of things he wanted to accomplish with Majestica.
Definitely more synthy-oriented than some of the stuff I've done in the past, but I gotta have the organic feel of the live instruments, whether it's the flute, whether it's electric or acoustic guitar. I'd been sort of influenced by some of the newer DJ ambient style music. For this record in particular, I really was moved by Bonobo's Migration record.
Sherry Finzer's influence for Majestica were a little different. tapping her 80s youth.
Oh, just all the pop songs and Michael Jackson, and we joke about, I think, George Michael sometimes. Because sometimes I think some of the melody lines I pick up, I'm like, what song is that from? It's from the 80s, you know. So I feel like a lot of the melodies come from songs from my high school days, you know, listening to the pop stuff on the radio.
I'm not sure how much of that I hear on Majestica's albums, but I do hear an 80s new wave synth sound as Anawati taps the same time period.
I graduated high school in 1985. And, you know, so I was there for the 80s, and I was there for Depeche Mode, and I was there for Aha, and Tears for Fears, and Talk Talk, and The Fix, and all of these, you know, I guess which would be synth pop bands in a lot of ways. Missing Persons was another one. And so I developed a love for those things way back when. The very core of that stuff comes from that early synthesizer-based music that I got introduced to in the 80s. And it just sort of floats around, and then, you know, it finds its way out as I write music 30 years later.
Playing mostly C flute and alto flute, Finzer gets to display her melodic and improvisational gifts in Majestica, and even has her flute sound like an electric violin run through a wah-wah pedal on the song Dark Years Away.
We're listening back to it, and I said, can you do something with my flute? Can you make it sound like an electric guitar?
The sound you're referring to, Sherry had said, all right, can you make it sound like a guitar? And I'm like, okay, flute to guitar. My answer is always, I can try. And I sort of left it at that. So it's not actually a wah-wah pedal. That is actually a Moog synthesizer filter emulation by Universal Audio, who does a lot of digital recreations of vintage gear.
Although Sherry Finzer comes from a classical flute tradition, she's found a way to merge with just about any kind of musician. She met her trialogue partner Darren Mahoney when she sat in with his country band. The sensitivity that she brings to her own music, which she considers to be healing music, also makes her sensitive to other musicians.
I think as I journey through life, I've certainly become more aware. You know, I guess the term is mindful these days about just things with myself, and I do think I can feel some connection with people. So I try to tap into it a little bit more, you know, as I go through life.
Sherry Finzer's latest projects include Majestica's Auriga to Orion, Let There Be Light with Tom Moore, and Somewhere New with Mark Holland. But don't blink, there's probably more already in the chute.